Hello, thank you for joining us and welcome to the premiere of the Digital Health Growth Show presented by Fire&Spark. This is the Marketing Nerd's Guide to Growing Digital Health Brands. We're going to be welcoming growth leaders from innovative brands to come on and wonk out together on the mechanisms and playbooks that are transforming their brands into market leaders. Big thanks to my team that made this all possible here at Fire&Spark. Fire&Spark is the only full-service SEO agency focused on patient acquisition for digital health brands. And beyond that, this show is part of something pretty exciting that we're building called the Digital Health Growth Mastermind, which is a community exclusively for digital health growth leaders. That includes this live show, in-person meetups across the country in a city near you, and a bunch more new and exciting ways that we're going to be rolling out for this community to learn and grow together, leading into 2026 and beyond. We would love your participation in growing this community. So if you're interested in joining, if you want to suggest topics, if you want to hear when we're coming to your city for a meetup or anything like that, please scan the QR code you see on your screen to get those notifications and to join. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn, and there will be a comment down below that you can follow to sign up as well. So some quick intros, and then we're going to get into the meat of it. So I'm Noah Goldfarb. I help run Fire&Spark, where I lead organic growth strategy for digital health brands like Bicycle Health, Alara Health, and Mochi Health. And Chris, you want to say hi?
Yeah, sure. And I'm Chris Turitzen. I am the founder of Single Aim. I've also been involved in building virtual health provider organizations over the last decade. Most of my time I've spent at Virta and Bicycle Health, and now I work with also dozens of other digital health companies on their growth strategy.
Awesome. And we are very excited to welcome our guest. Karin Underwood is the Director of Growth Optimization at Virta Health, where she leads DTC experimentation, forecasting, and the content systems behind Virta's enrollment engine. She focuses on building GTM frameworks that scale across lifecycle, content creation, and direct mail. And she also advises early stage companies like Focal on outbound strategy, answer engine optimization, and social media go-to-market strategies that turn complex products into clear, high-converting stories. If you knew what all of that meant, you are in the right place. Chris, Karin, you want to say hi? Anything else I missed there from your impressive background?
No, yeah, really excited just to engage with this audience. It's nice to be with fellow health tech nerds who are just thinking about what the next frontier is and how we help companies like Virta or companies, companies across the space grow. It's a very exciting time with AI and with all the changes happening. So excited to dive in.
Awesome. And Chris, with that, why don't you frame this conversation for us?
Let's do it. So excited for our first show here and excited to have Karin here. So our first topic we're going to talk about, the goal of the show is to talk about kind of these like obscure behind the scenes topics that nobody else is talking about in digital health growth. And so today we're going to be focusing on a question that actually does come up a lot, but I'd say in usually closed rooms and usually some sizable companies. And the question is, what is the role of direct to consumer marketing in the context of a B2B2C or business to consumer company? So we invited Karin here, and I think she is one of the best people to talk to on this topic. I've had actually quite a few conversations with her on this topic before, and she has some of the most sophisticated thoughts, I think from direct experience, from her experience at Virta, and also having worked at Virta twice over a period of 10 years
Yeah.
and seen various eras of the company, also running her own company that was also doing B2B2C and also working at the White House. So she's done quite a bit of this kind of thing. So I just want to go back in time a little bit to start this out, and then we can talk about what we're going to talk about. So direct-to-consumer marketing in the context of healthcare has a bit of a history. And I think let's start by going back about 10 or 15 years. This was when companies like Omada, Virta, a lot of the mental health companies were getting started. And I think at that time, there was a lot of excitement about direct-to-consumer, that there's this new world where people were going to determine what treatments they were going to get. And at the time, I think some of that excitement did not turn into reality. And what people realized at the time was these channels, these B2B2C channels, were actually very powerful. So getting employers to help out with marketing, getting payers to help out, were very powerful. So I think there was a period of time where those companies grew in those channels. Then we moved to like the 2020 era, the like COVID and then telemedicine growth, and like tons of companies grew up in that era too, where they were D2C forward. They grew with paid SEO, and basically showed that direct consumer like worked in really like large levels. And that takes us to where we are today. So where there's like this thriving set of D2C companies, there's a thriving set of B2B2C companies. And I would say there's a grand smushing together of those kind of channels. And so for example, D2C companies are moving into B2B2C, B2B2C companies are moving into D2C, which brings up a bunch of questions about, I think, and that's what this conversation today is about, which is the what, the when, and the how to do D2C in the context of B2B2C. So I want to talk about what exactly is D2C. I think sometimes the terminology can be confusing. Secondly, how do you know when is the right time to invest? And then thirdly, how to do it best. Like how to do it well, what are the channels, etc. So let's jump in. Karin, you ready to answer some questions about how this works? Okay, cool.
I just wanted to say real quick, we have a bunch of questions for Karin, but we're also looking to get any questions that anyone in the audience might have. So feel free to leave them in the chat and we will try to get to them.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, cool. All right, cool. Let's start. Can you just give us like a short 1-minute rundown of Virta's business model so we all know what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, so Virta is a health tech company that has been around for 10 years at this point, which is an achievement for any startup, I would say, and serves patients and individuals with type 2 diabetes, with obesity, and those that are kind of looking to get off of GLP-1s or manage their GLP-1s. And Virta takes a nutrition first approach to all of our work. So really, if you read the labels of the GLP-1 medication, it says start with nutrition. That's how Virta thinks about things. And the success has really been hinged on helping people not just manage their condition, but actually fundamentally improve it through the way that through like a fundamental change in metabolic health. And so I will plug this just because I think it gives the kind of context that people in this nerd audience would like to see, which is, and I think it will relate a lot to our conversation today, which is, this is the annual report on metabolic disease reversal that shows some of what Virta has done, 12 million US lives covered, 200,000 members treated, and 550 organizations served. So that's some of that B2B that then we'll be talking about the B2C. And I will also say we will talk about the B2B to B2C because many of these growing health companies like Virta or Hinge are relying on partnerships models to scale. And so it creates an extra level of B2B, which we might get into today.
Yeah, cool. So my assumption here is Virta is predominantly distributed via what we would call B2B2C channels. Is that right, Karin? Like things like, let's call it emails and like to employees and stuff like that. Okay. What does D2C even mean? I think let's get into that first. So like what channels are we referring to here? Because I think there's some overlap. Can you talk about that? Like what is D2C in this context?
Yes. So to your point, Chris, yeah, I don't think of D2C as a separate business within a B2B2C model. You're right that a lot of the demand still comes from the like B2B channels. I think of it as a demand engine that's essentially like capturing consumer intent upstream of when we get employer eligibility. So we can capture those intent queries earlier than when we're getting data on the eligibility file, which then drives the demand. And I think of D2C as part of the portfolio. So it's a portfolio, it's a channel, but it's like a part of a larger portfolio of investments in terms of growth and growth leadership. When I think of D2C, I think of SEO, digital, AEO at this point with AI, and then I also think about some like other kind of YouTube, podcasts, like other content outlets that we invest in order to create some of that. And I would include paid social. So those are my categories. And then I think there's a few like dual purpose channels, like web, email nurture that supports direct consumers, and then maybe some like CRM that I would call both D2C, but also benefits the B2B side of the house.
So there's like some channels that are like exclusively B2B2C, like an email from HR. Would that be a good example?
Yeah, a few examples of that would be email from HR, email from Virta, mail from Virta, SMS from Virta, SMS from HR. Those I think of as purely B2B2C because we are dependent on the eligibility file having the data that we need to issue those communications. Whereas D2C is actually tapping into like the consumer marketplace of what people are searching for and what's coming up. And so I view success as like complementing those two strategies and viewing it as a portfolio.
And there's also some in the middle, as you're saying. I think you mentioned mailers is kind of overlapping between the two.
Yeah, I think something that's relevant is even within a B2B2C model, it can be easy to over focus on the B2B side of the house, but it's incredibly important to continue to build empathy and actually gather data on what's working in terms of consumer preferences. So some of the work I've done that kind of overlaps with some of the SEO, AEO work is building content taxonomies so that we can actually deconstruct the content that we're sending out to eligibles into we can tell you like where on the mailer a QR code needs to go for a 200% lift in conversion. We've been doing a lot of deconstruction of our content to make sure that we're continuing to drive conversions. And I think that kind of overlaps a little bit with some of the work of how do you, at an SEO agency, like pump a lot of high performing content out. That's something I think about in my role.
Okay, so what we're talking about today then, it sounds like, is maybe kind of, it's like pure D2C channels. You mentioned SEO, you mentioned paid social, you mentioned paid search. So those are like in the purview here. And then secondarily is kind of the customer or the patient experience, which is like the, how well they're converting, what's the conversion rate, optimization, stuff like that. So if we're kind of like, if we want the center of the target, we're talking like essentially like SEO paid channels. And then like beyond that is this a conversion rate. And then we start moving into things that really start overlapping with B2B2C. Is that a good way of thinking about it?
Yes, I'm envisioning the Lenny's growth tree of different investments. And yeah, that's how I think of it.
Okay, cool. Let's talk a little bit about like how it's you're a company that's in the market for D2C channels as a B2B2C company. So like what attributes of the company are there certain things that make it so like I would just know this is not a fit for me, or I would know this is a fit for me? And I want to follow up after that with like when is the right time?
Yeah, this is a good question because I know you worked on some SEO work at Virta back in the day. And I actually think that, Chris, you probably laid some good foundation for what Virta is doing now, because as you know, it takes a long time to build up credibility in the space, to get listed, to get the number of impressions that actually mean that you're not just getting like intent, but actually some conversion lift from SEO. And so something that helps Virta, I will say, is that 10-year history that I mentioned. So when we think about some of those search terms that are smaller search terms around A1C 6.5 reduction, like there's just a lot more content that we can pull from. There's a lot more credibility in this space, and there's not a lot more like recognition from search engines of that content. And so I think that's credit to you, Chris. Like you started it. It probably wasn't getting as much traction, but it's like investing, like starting early actually can be really powerful. Even if there's marketers that come after you that are doing that next stage of it, that is the work that you did, Chris, lay the foundation for a broader scale later of SEO and like digital at Virta. And then I think the other thing I would think about is like the the knowledge base. So a really important aspect of being able to produce this, the volume of content that you need to get this to work well, is having a big enough knowledge base to draw from. That's like research, papers, clinical credibility. And so thinking about who you have in-house at the company that can help you be those experts, that can help you pop in, write content, like produce quickly, is another critical factor. So I would think like, starting early, even if you're not seeing the signal, especially with the change that we're seeing with AI. And then when the question is like, when do you feel like you have the internal expertise to really juice the channel in the way that you're going to get both like intense and then broad awareness that will benefit the rest of that will benefit other channels.
Karin was referencing there that I worked at Virta, and it's true. I was actually the D2C guy at Virta like almost 10 years ago, and have gone on to do other things. But it's been interesting to see that evolution over the time. I think like, how does Virta know D2C is right for them? I guess what I'm trying to get at here is I've talked to many like smaller, larger companies that go the employer health plan model, like for distribution. And they've tried things in D2C, and I'd say they've concluded that it doesn't work. So are they wrong? Or is there something about them that's different? Like what makes you and Virta confident that D2C is worth it? And maybe other examples where it would not be worth it.
Yeah, as I mentioned, it isn't, let's just say it's not mail. Like it's not the highest converting channel still in the strategy. But I think when you think about this coverage, if you really think about like a big B2C, this is kind of big, a big B2B2C company, at enough covered lives, it becomes a B2C company because everyone is eligible for the program. And the way that Virta has expanded our product pathways, we used to just cover diabetes. We expanded to obesity. Now we're covering people with pre-diabetes, with weight loss. So that covers about 70% of the population. So it's kind of on the commercial team to go sell those deals. But once that's true, so I think all of that to say, if you view that your business is heading in that direction and you're going to have that kind of coverage, it's an investment that you want to make. And then, what I think is like, we are capturing, I would say, broad awareness. The big benefits that we're seeing are like broad awareness and brand awareness. So it's also, is that important to your leadership? You might not see immediate conversions and like revenue gains as quickly, but that broad awareness, in my view, lifts all the other channels. So if someone sees a direct mailer, but before they saw the direct mailer, they saw something on another channel, or they get retargeted, like that's where you see that overall lift that creates the bigger impact. So I think I would say, again, as always, it depends, but some things I would look for is how important is it to your leadership to have that brand awareness. You can see even from the metabolic disease report, category definition, brand awareness, like that is very important to some companies. And then on top of the brand awareness, those goals, I think it is, are you getting enough from your existing channels? Like, are you running a hot hand, or do you want to build a broader portfolio? And I think from a growth perspective, it makes sense to always build resilience and not overly rely on a few channels that are working. And so I would say, in my mind, it's worth, like I said earlier, like making that investment early, trying it, figuring out within that D2C portfolio, where are you getting resonance? Because if you can get it to 5 to 10% of your brand lift, that is that's a meaningful differentiation and a de-risk for kind of over-reliance on other marketing channels.
Okay, so I think this is kind of getting to the core here. Why, when you talk to some random marketer at some random B2B2C company, they may give you some random response on this topic, which is like, some will say it's great, some will say it's not great, and we've tried it, it doesn't work. Which is, as you said, it depends, one of these very annoying words. And also the fact that like at different times it may be relevant and may not be relevant. I guess.
Yeah, and I guess to be clear, like the way I view it is this is in funnel work. It's getting brand awareness. If you think about AEO, that's like a relatively low intent audience. So we're not driving like qualified apps and enrolls from this strategy. What we are viewing is like driving is like hundreds and thousands of views per month around terms, around keywords, around things that get lift and that drive like branded search and things like that. And so that awareness lift, when you're at a stage where you're at the like, yeah, you're getting conversion from your other channels, it actually is even more powerful because let's say you have a strong mail channel, a strong email channel. It's a no-brainer to layer on top of that, like those intent searches, those yes, that additional brand awareness, because the traffic that you can drive is incredible. And then that helps with kind of it like rises, it gives other teams greater lift on all the efforts that they're doing.
Is it correct to say this is something, this is kind of one of these like soft values a little bit, you said it doesn't like directly drive a ton of conversions, but it provides this kind of air cover element where like all boats rise. And do you think it's the kind of thing that like you have to start doing it before you feel like it's like really the time, in the sense that there's some sort of forward-lookingness required here? I think this is going to pay off in the future.
Yeah, I think especially with AI, the strategy with AI is the way consumer search is happening is changing so quickly. Like very quickly, people are going from searching Google for everything you can to searching chat and searching Gemini, searching Claude. And when people make those searches, they ask different kinds of questions than when they're searching Google. So that means that especially for small startups, I think it's an advantage to be early because you can own areas of the internet that aren't currently dominated by other players. By finding some of that like long tail SEO, you can basically, if you're upfront, you can start to seed in offsite references like YouTube, really powerful really powerful assets that then pay off over time. So yes, I think of it exactly like almost an investment strategy again, where it's like you want to start that work of getting that offsite content, that onsite content early, so that as the search engines take months to start to kind of like get that content and share it, you're getting that upfront investment. So yeah, I think it is dependent. If you're feeling, oh, I'm VC backed and I have to spend all my capital to be able to just only do highest ROI, I have no wiggle room, that is a tough place to be. And I think that it's still worth spending some cycles on how do you lay the foundation so that you can start making this investment sooner rather than later. Because again, if you can figure out a strategy that is working where you're getting those eyeballs, that growth will only compound over time.
Yeah, I think there's a good point there, and I'll pull Noah in for a second too. But the like the amount of money that these companies like Virta are spending on their commercialization team, I think is in the millions of dollars per year, maybe in tens of millions of dollars per year. And to lay a good SEO foundation is nowhere near tens of millions of dollars per year. Actually, Noah, can you come in here? Like, with the changes in AI, evolving search behaviors, et cetera, like kind of reflect on what Karin said. Like, is there a good way of kind of doing either like a kind of good basis, as she's referencing in the SEO world?
Yeah, so a few things that I was thinking about as Karin was speaking. One goes to something earlier on, which is when you were talking about coverage, like what percentage of the population, could be a Virta member. And I was thinking about how when we talk to our B2B2C clients or company B2B2C brands, there's often this talk about coverage and is it worth it for us? And in a way where we don't have the same conversation with D2C brands that are not national. So even if they're only in 1% of the country, they don't ask that question. And I just think that's a really or they don't ask the question in the same way. At least it's almost like a precondition that SEO does make sense because you're trying to grow and so I just think that's interesting, and I wonder if B2B2C marketers, like, if the conversation might merit changing a little bit and thinking about it more in I guess more akin to how some of these more local companies do or non-national companies do. And then the other thing that I was thinking about was what you were saying around long tail. Because one thing we feel very passionately about, especially when we're working with earlier stage brands who aren't the biggest players, although it applies to the big players as well in a given space, is being able to identify what your niche is and where you can really excel and get that competitive advantage. And I think the consistent maybe mistake that people make is they look at the keywords that they would most want to rank for, largely based on the search volume, and they see the competitors there and say, well, it's going to take us 10 years to be able to compete with those terms. And I think with AI, you're going to be able to level the playing field more because people are searching specifically for their needs. They're not just searching, they might, maybe they used to search a broad term like weight loss treatment, but maybe now it's weight loss for, I don't know, new mothers, people over a certain age, specific demographics and specific situations, more modifiers like that I can do at home, or how it might interact with another condition. And I think those specific search terms or prompts open up the door for more companies to compete, because companies haven't been targeting that in the past. There's been no need to.
Yeah.
I'll ask you. Sorry, Karin. So this is it. Okay. Cool. One more question, then I'll hand over to Noah. I know he has some questions. So if I was a startup starting in 2010, I probably would have thought D2C was a big deal. And then I think I would have realized that B2B2C was a bigger deal. If I'm a startup starting in 2025 and just moving forward, do you think D2C is becoming more or less relevant, in the sense that, the digital health companies that are being founded or growing today, is it becoming more optional or less optional that they have like a D2C presence?
My perspective is it's becoming less optional. Outside of Virta, if you look at a company like MIDI, like that is a company where some of the emerging business models are just around what MIDI does is like provide HRT, hormone resource therapy to women in menopause. And they do work with employers, but then they have a really strong brand strategy that gives them credibility on the D2C side. And that's been, I think, if you look at their history, like a quite successful investment for them. So that's a good example where we've seen that it is a little bit of a non-negotiable to start. I think that, you're seeing other kind of on the CGM side, you're seeing similar things. So to me, the marketplace indicates that there is a lot of success with focusing on this D2C early. And really it is about good marketing. Like, who's your ICP? What's the end user? What's motivating them? Where are the points where we're going to convert that intent and convert them into better leads and better, at a higher revenue. And I think that the D2C effort only helps that. If you don't do that D2C side, it's harder for that to inform the work through other channels. And so, I think the market has played out that it is an important early, it's not 2010 anymore, and it's an important early investment.
Awesome. And we do have a great question that came in through the comments. So please keep those coming. We were planning to ask something similar at the end, or closer to the end, but we can bring it in now. And I really like the way it was framed. So the person asks, between lessons learned and new AI strategies and skills, if you were to start again today, what would you be doing the same? And what would you be doing differently at the kind of 0 to 1 stage of this kind of D2C journey? So let's start with like the same, which I guess would be like, what just worked? Like, what would you do again?
Okay. Same. Look for great areas of like, I've talked to Chris a little bit about this, like, where is your hot hand? What is working in your channel strategy and in your D2C strategy? And how do you just relentlessly optimize what is working? So if that's on digital, how do you, I think something that can be hard is what I call like killing your darlings, or if something's not working, say it's not working, but like being really, really ruthless around any signal that you're seeing. If it's directional, turn it stat sig. If it's, if you're starting to see some data, like double down on that data. I think that, and then the other piece that's been important is just, if you have great existing content that you know is resonating, don't sleep on it. Like, don't say, oh, that's that other team. That's like the content team, like this metabolic health report. Leverage every single piece of existing content from other teams in your org, because that can be powerful SEO fodder. That can be powerful for YouTube. Like, there's just a lot of cross collaboration that I think it's easy to think, oh, that's outside of my lane, but I would continue to do that. Something I would do differently, I'm curious how, if you're seeing this also, Noah, is like when you start an AI investment, for example, the first thing should just be an audit of 100 questions that you're searching, and you look at the internet and you just see how your brand is ranked compared to other brands in this space. Some of the companies have been doing this for 10 years. It's so insightful so quickly. I think a lot of founders I've worked with, they just like think they're showing up on search engine results pages. And then you can do an audit, you can pull the questions, you can show the data, and it's like, we are not. And so I've seen founders be over protective of their brand. They don't want to put anything out until it's perfect. Yeah. But when I show them the data, I'm like, no, we're starting from zero. Like the baseline is zero. And so an opportunity is just, I think like having humility and just coming with a beginner's mindset around what the landscape looks like. And then, Noah, to your point, like once you do that, there's so many opportunities out there. It just might not be on the biggest keywords that you're thinking of. And that can get you, again, like that starting lift that we need to build velocity.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that brought to mind for me, but one thing in particular is, I think I made a LinkedIn post about this a couple of weeks ago. One thing that I think is being slept on when it comes to AI search is the branded search side of things. So one, there's the visibility, which is what you're saying. For the essentially non-branded terms you would like to show up for that your audience is searching, are you showing up or not? And you could assume yes, but it's better to check. But in addition, and this is where the humility comes in, I love searching, especially in AI, is Virta legit? Pros and cons Virta versus. And the reason that takes humility is often when we bring that to our clients, they say, well, these things aren't true. I'm like, well, it doesn't actually matter whether or not they're true. It matters that there's enough sentiment online indicating that they are true, that it's an issue probably preventing you from showing up in traditional search and AI search. And then when people are doing their own search, which more and more is happening on AI platforms, this is what they're seeing. So you got to address it one way or another. And so I'm just going to keep going with some kind of SEO questions, because you were talking about output, and I'm kind of curious, like how much content do you create like now, and how has that evolved? How's that evolved over time?
Yes, there's a lot of there's a lot of content. I think that there's kind of the traditional SEO strategy, which is like the pages and like that kind of setup, and then there's an ongoing effort to create net new content based on the digital rankings that we're seeing. And so that's it's like every week, every quarter, we're hitting goals, building new content for a few different plays of what we think will be high performing. So those plays are around things that we've already, again, it's not on like diabetes, it's on specific A1C reductions. It's on specific, like, we just a blog post on like 56 names of sugar. It's on some of these certain terms that we've seen be really important. But I think something that I've seen with AI that might be relevant to this audience is like, once you can get to a format, once you can give AI what good looks like once you have that winning content set or page or format, you can replicate that quite quickly. But you need to instruct AI on what good looks like. And then once you can inform AI of what good looks like, the actual content production process can be very productive. So I would say to back up, like finding those winning plays of what is resonating, where are you getting a lot of eyeballs and traction, and then using a lean content team to scale that up in a way that allows you to like leverage the latest technology, produce quickly, and just double down on where you're seeing that traction. It can be a lot of content, but once you have it set up, you know, I joke like sometimes we have to feed the content beast, but once you have that moving, it's possible to then kind of just leverage a pretty lean team and produce pretty high value content.
And then I have one other question, and I want to pass it back over to Chris. One thing we talk about a lot with our clients is kind of like the streamlining of content production, and also like on the quality side, it helps as well when you're able to align like your content production team with your servicing team, your people on the treatment side of the business. And that's often like topic ideation, the questions that the enrollment team might get asked, things like that. Is that something you've done a lot of at Virta? And if so, I guess I'd be curious what the systems look like.
Oh, yes. In terms of working with cross-functional teams, it's a good question. We've pulled from, we've for topic ideation, we've worked a lot with our content teams. If you think about the funnel, there's like a lot of the work I do on growth is very top of funnel work, but then there's mid funnel work where we are seeing data around like what's resonating from people who are already enrolled. So that's some of the ideation that happens. And then, and then in terms of, it also has just been a lot of like getting into the data of like being in Amplitude, being in our platforms of what are we seeing ranking. And then to the point I made at the beginning, it's like that blog about sugar, I can link it. It's a good article. It's from like 2018 maybe, but it's just been up for so long, and it is actually pretty effective. We're actually updating it. There's now 83 names for sugar, not 53 names for sugar. Like drawing on what we're seeing resonate from those early investments that were made. And then that's a really strong place for ideation. And that's, again, like we can just leverage some of the traction we've seen earlier in terms of what's performing, and then juice that up from a content perspective.
I love that, like the flywheel of content. Go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to jump into a question from the audience.
Please.
Shall I do that? Okay, cool. So a question from Sarah. So we talked about brand awareness lift. Karin, how do you measure that?
Oh, Amplitude. Like very tactically. I'm like, we have, that's a good question. We have reports built in Amplitude, and we track, like, we basically track, it's like both conversions and UTM tracking that we're getting from direct. Sorry, let me think about this for 2 seconds to get this right. So yeah, we are thinking about like brand search and then non-brand search, and what we're getting direct conversion from the people who are directly searching for Virta Health, and then people who are searching for other things related to Virta Health, and then how that converts to Virta Health. And so we do reporting that monitors basically like brand, non-brand search. We track that as part of our UTM tracking and things like that. And then we kind of build that into our portfolio of like modeling around our channels and things like that. So tactically, that's the categories we think of. And then in terms of actual execution, we run all of that through Amplitude reporting and try to see, we just set goals for the team of like, can we do 10% more this quarter? Can we do 10% more? And again, build on where we're seeing some resonance and continue to amp that up.
Yeah, so branded search does seem like a really great way of doing it. I just checked out Virta Health on Ahrefs keyword tool. You're doing like 10,000 monthly branded for Virta Health, and that's up like 50% in the last year or two, or something like that. So
yes,
looks like it's moving in the right direction. And I feel like most digital health companies can't say that 10,000 people are searching them every month on Google. All right, I want to talk kind of very tactically here. Like, a lot of companies are very resource constrained. And I think one thing that's true about Virta is, you've had quite a bit of resources throughout essentially the existence of the company. So maybe not everyone is like Virta. So if you're extremely resource constrained, either let's call it like a very small startup with like some or no funding, or let's say you're further along, but like margins are tight. What's the one thing that you would say, like this? Let's call this like a B2B2C company that has a good amount of employer and some payer relationships, but really hasn't invested in D2C kind of at all. What would you say that they should do first?
Oh, that's such a good question. Yeah, the very, like, as I said earlier, just the very first thing, and I've gotten to do this with some startups, is just like run an audit of what you have today and what you don't have. Do you have any offsite postings? Do you have any like traction on Google, on Meta? Do you have any? So I think like the very first step is not to assume you're just going to like take a playbook and apply it, but actually run that quick audit of like, how are you ranking? Where are you seeing leverage? What's your channel mix? And then like, where do you need diversification? So I would do that first. I don't think there is a consistent, like, this is the first touch, but from what we've talked about, what I would think about today that we've never thought about before is like, what does the AI search ranking look like? Where are there opportunities on the search page that didn't exist before? And how do I, something I think is powerful that I think about is like, how do you add value in D2C that decreases the time to value, both for the commercial buyer, but also for the end user? So can you offer something that's a D2C part of your strategy, like something that helps you rank on SEO, but it also demystifies the buying process for a group that needs to install an app? Or, like, can you basically take some of that content that's behind your firewall and put it outside, shorten the time to value, give people a sense of what they get once they sign up for the program, which is valuable. And on top of that, you're helping your D2C strategy. So I think that might be where I would start, is like, what's my really high value content resonance points that I could actually take out from behind my paywall and start. And then how does that crosswalk with the audit I do of my search engine pages, and start there and start to crosswalk that data to see what you can find.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, maybe I'm biased, but what I'm hearing in a lot of this conversation is things that relate to content and search engine and AI optimization. Like, that's kind of like I think a lot of people think paid when they think D2C, and maybe we'll go there first, but it's usually like a money sink, especially in a B2B2C context. It's something you like kind of have to do later. But if you want to sum that up, do you think it's basically like, it's like bringing content that has dual purpose for like search and for essentially the conversion funnel and like the decision cycle for your user? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I think I'm speaking specifically to in a resource constrained environment where you aren't, you're not bringing in an agency, you're not like, yet, but that's the way to start to get some of those signals. And then, to your point, we've talked about it. I think the like paid search is powerful. So once you can start to get the data that you can build on top of, but I think that content is a powerful starting point, and then that gives you more data, and then that gives you more direction setting for a paid search.
And I like the idea of this like value providing content, because one thing I've been thinking about a lot over the last couple of years, since ChatGPT came out, essentially, is like the purpose of a website in a lot of ways is changing. And it's changing kind of slowly, so it's a little bit hard to notice, but in the past, that's where you would have to go to get most of your information. So you click on one of the 10 blue links you're presented with, and now AI can do a lot of that. So like a website is kind of filling a different purpose. And in what you're explaining, it's providing value, or it's like proving the efficacy or the reason somebody would take that leap to try you all out, which I think is really interesting.
All right, I think we're going to kind of nearing time here. Noah, do you have anything else you want to ask?
Well, I do want to make sure that if there are any other questions coming in from the audience, make sure to get those in so we can answer those before we wrap up. I did want to ask you about building a team. Like, so if you've been, if you're, let's say, historically been B2B2C business, and that's what you've been focusing on. Is it the same team and you're just saying, go tackle D2C now? Are there different roles or kinds of vendors you look for? Anything like that come to mind?
Yeah, I think something I've observed is it's very easy to hire for people who have done the exact role before. And so been in like a B2B healthcare marketing context, for example, bringing in people from outside of that space who come from the consumer world, for example, and can challenge the status quo thinking. It's like, to me, Virta challenges the status quo thinking is we're saying, oh, we're going to treat the root cause of metabolic disease, and we're going to make sure that you don't have diabetes in the future. That's amazing. I actually think there's a similar corollary with like someone challenging the root cause thinking of how to do D2C well, the bringing in some like creative ideas on designing opt-out strategies versus opt-in at the B2B level, basically bringing like a different perspective on why to make investments that scale, that are around direct to consumer, that are open to doing more rapid iteration and rapid testing, and the idea of like, let's launch an experiment today. I really look for, when I think about building a team, it's like, how do we create that mix of people that are going to both bring expertise, like be able to execute and scale, but then also bring that creative thinking and bring that outside of the box thinking that allows us to test a new channel. And especially with like a bigger company, it's easy to just, things are the way they are. But I've seen firsthand that having a breadth of backgrounds and expertise has huge value for standing up D2C channels specifically.
Awesome. And we're gonna try to wrap things up with takeaways, like just try to put a fine point on this. I have one more question. Maybe Chris has one more before we get there. And my question is going to be like, say you're in an organization, not Virta, and you're trying to make the case for this to the rest of the team, to your executives or whoever it might be. My question would be, I guess maybe a few parts of it. One is like timeline, which is like, this is what I'm pushing for. This is the timeline that I want us to be looking at. Like, are we looking at 3 months from now, we're going to say that this is successful, or a year from now, or 5 years from now? And then also just kind of the rest of that pitch. Like, what is in general the case to be made, and like in particular the value that you would say is out there that you would try to present. What's the elevator pitch of why this was worthwhile for Virta in a way?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think it's hard in my mind. Like, we always talk about in-year savings with our clients at Virta. I think similarly, you want to see in-year like wins from any D2C strategy, but ideally within a quarter, like I think of a 90-day plan for someone I'm onboarding, like that is when you want to start to see some traction, because it then can help you make the decision of like, do I make further investments? Do I not? So that's what I would think about in timeline. And then, yeah, for D2C, I mean, I think it's about two things. One, it is risk reduction for, I spoke about this a little bit earlier, but just like channel diversification. It gives you more data, more insight, more options in terms of like your channel mix and what's most important from a growth perspective. So I would pitch leadership on risk reduction in the long term of a lack of like over dependency on existing channels, especially with bigger, more complex businesses. You need more optionality. And so I think it provides that. And then it always comes back to ROI. So just like something I've done is try to really quantify ROI in terms of lift. So in some of like conversion rate optimization on web pages, for example, being able to make a case to leadership of like, hey, a 1% lift in this page will get us X dollars. If that's $300,000 or $1 million, being really clear of what incremental investments look like and how those incremental investments directly hit revenue. I think that's relevant always for every leader. And so framing it, I think not in just like, we're going to make $1 million off of this, but we are going to start a continuous improvement engine, and every little improvement we make is going to have a payoff. So yeah, I think that's where who can say no to like, oh, we're going to launch more channels that will get us more always on growth. And then we're going to see an ROI from these incremental investments and trying to really quantify that ROI.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right. So to put a bow on this, we're going to go with takeaways. Like if there was one thing that somebody should be walking away from this conversation with, I'm going to start with you, Chris. One thing you walked away from this conversation with, what would it be?
Yeah, I think this is one of these conversations that can seem very confusing, but I don't actually think is. I think the question here is if you as a B2B2C company are going to do paid and or SEO. So, and I actually think those are different decisions too. You can do one or the other. I think the other piece I would add to that is that it doesn't have to be big, but it has to be consistent over time.
Yeah.
I think there may be some intimidation that it feels like I got to really go into this, but there's a big difference between doing nothing and something in the world of content creation. So just like small steps.
Awesome. For me, what I heard is that a lot of your kind of journey at Virta with this has been about adapting, right? Like, so you, like Chris kind of teed up at the very beginning, you were adapting to the digital health market. And what you talked about a lot, especially with AI search, is adapting to changes in the shape of marketing channels and what various channels are good for. Like Chris said at the beginning, this conversation probably would have looked quite different 5 years ago. And if we were to have this conversation again in 1 year, which maybe we should do, it'll probably look different as well because the channels will have changed. And what I heard is a big eye towards what those changes are and keeping those in view and changing your strategy and approach accordingly. And then also the kind of operational side of things as well, like what's working in the business. What does Virta do well? What's your position? It seems like you're constantly integrating that into your marketing strategy and using that as something that can start or keep that flywheel going for greater results. So just that adaptive mindset and really keeping an eye on those things. What about you, Karin? If somebody was walking away with one takeaway, what would you want them to walk away with?
Yeah, I think I loved, Noah, what you said of like, it can be hard to hold in any leadership position ambiguity in mind. It can be hard to accept that like the purpose of a website is changing. That's a big statement. And I think the more that we do what you said, like continue to be adaptive in our thinking about what the world is, what's capable, what's possible, how consumers are reacting to both content, but also marketing, but also paid and social. It's something that all of us it can be hard to keep in mind, but it is the future. And so it's the thing that I want to keep learning about and that all of us can keep learning about. And there's so much great work to do ahead.
Awesome. This was fantastic. Thank you so much, Karin, for being here and chatting with us. Like I learned a ton, had a great time. So really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
And so for everyone like who attended, appreciate it. We would love your support and participation in growing this digital health growth community that we're looking to grow here. So if you're interested in joining, please scan that QR code. I think we're going to throw it back up on the screen. Should be a link in the comments as well where you can submit your information. Again, we're doing a lot of cool stuff, including hosted events where you get to meet up with other people who have your job title at another cool organization in a city near you. So if you'd like to receive updates on any of that, follow those links, follow that QR code, and also reach out to me and Chris on LinkedIn. We'd love to chat about anything we talked about here today, any other suggestions for topics or guests, all of that stuff would be great. So thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Karin, for lending us your expertise, and everybody keep an eye out for the next episode.
Can I tease our next episode?
Please, Chris.
Okay, I love that.
I actually think Karin would be a great guest for this one too. So if we just want this show to be us three talking, we can just do
something. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Anyways, it is called The Capacity Crunch, solving the tension between supply and demand in digital health. Yeah. So I think a lot of people who are in the know that managing supply and demand is kind of one of the top topics in this world. So we're going to get somebody or somebody's. My hope would be somebody on the kind of ops side and somebody on the growth side to talk about how you constantly do that dance. So that will be coming up in January.
If anyone thinks they'd be a good fit for that or for another future up, please reach out. We'd love to chat. Awesome. Looking forward to that. In the meantime, happy holidays and see you all around. Thank you.
Thanks, Noah. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Chris. Thanks, everyone.